We have new information about the deadly shooting of a pregnant woman in Tallahassee yesterday. Arrest papers say she was the suspect's girlfriend. Jakari Martin Chagrin told investigators that he and Maya Johnson were arguing at their home on River Breeze Lane. He said he grabbed some of his belongings and was trying to leave when the gun went off. He claims the gun was not in his hand, but pinned against his body. The gunshot killed Johnson and her unborn child. Martin Chagrin is facing 2 counts of manslaughter.
And glory. We remember before you today our beloved Maya. We thank you for giving her to us to know and to love as a companion in our pilgrimage on earth. In your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Amen.
In the warm sunshine of Tallahassee, Florida, Maya Johnson moved through her days with purpose and determination. At 25, she embodied the complex reality of young motherhood, exhausted yet driven, stressed yet full of hope. Her 2 children, ages 4 and 6, were the center of her world, their photos dotting the walls of the modest home on River Breeze Lane, where laughter and occasional chaos merged into the soundtrack of their lives. Those who knew Maya described a woman who refused to be defined solely by her struggles. She always made time for others, recalled Denise, a longtime friend who lived 3 doors down. Even when she was going through her own storms, Maya would check in on you, bring over food if you were sick, or watch your kids if you needed a break. This generosity of spirit made her a valued presence in her neighborhood, where single mothers often formed informal support networks to navigate the challenges of raising children on limited resources. By October 2022, Maya's life was poised for significant change. 9 weeks pregnant with her 3rd child, she maintained a cautious optimism about expanding her family. Close friends knew she had mixed feelings: joy about the new life growing inside her, concern about the financial strain, and increasingly, worry about her relationship with the baby's father, Jakari Martin Chagrin. She wanted this baby, her sister Kayla would later tell authorities, but she was realistic about how hard it would be. Mia wasn't someone who pretended things were perfect when they weren't. This pragmatism extended to how she approached motherhood, with equal parts love and discipline, creating structure for her children while encouraging their curiosity and independence. At home, Maya worked diligently to create stability. The refrigerator displayed her children's artwork alongside a carefully plotted calendar of school events, doctor appointments, and work shifts. Though money was tight, she found creative ways to make their apartment feel like home. Second-hand furniture artfully arranged, plants thriving on windowsills, and always music playing in the background. When the children's father drifted from their lives 2 years earlier, she doubled down on creating an environment where they would feel secure despite his absence. In her community, Maya had built meaningful connections. She volunteered monthly at the local food pantry, participated in her children's school activities, and occasionally attended services at Lighthouse Community Church. These touchpoints helped ground her when domestic tensions threatened to pull her under. She never wanted to be portrayed as a victim, said Marcus, who coordinated the food pantry where Maya volunteered. That woman had goals. She was taking online classes in healthcare administration, 2 credits at a time. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. Her social media presence reflected this determination. Unlike many of her peers, Maya posted sparingly, mostly photos of special moments with her children, occasional inspirational quotes, and updates about her educational journey. What she shared was authentic rather than aspirational, grounded in her actual experiences rather than an idealized version of her life. What these posts didn't show was the increasing conflict at home. As her relationship with Jakari deteriorated, Maya became more selective about what she shared online. Friends noticed fewer posts, less engagement. In retrospect, this digital withdrawal mirrored her gradual isolation in real life, a common pattern in relationships marked by controlling behavior. By fall 2024, those closest to Maya sensed her withdrawing further. Phone calls went unreturned. Plans were canceled last minute. Her sister Kayla noticed bruises during a rare family dinner in early October, but accepted Maya's explanation about bumping into a door frame. Like many victims of domestic violence, Maya had become adept at crafting explanations that seemed plausible on the surface. The tragedy that occurred on October 22nd would later force everyone in Maya's life to reconsider what they had seen and what they had missed. The signs were there. In her changed demeanor, in her increasing isolation, in the subtle shifts in how she moved through the world. But at the time, no one pieced these fragments together into the complete picture of danger that was forming in that modest home on River Breeze Lane. Before we continue with Maya's story, I want to take a moment to connect with you directly. Cases like this one affect us all. They make us question how well we know our neighbors, our friends, even our family members. If you're finding value in understanding Maya's experience, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue bringing attention to these important stories that might otherwise go untold. In the comments below, I'd like to hear your thoughts. What responsibilities do we have to notice when someone in our community might be in danger? Have you ever recognized warning behaviors in a relationship, whether your own or someone else's? Your perspective adds depth to this conversation and might even help someone watching who needs to hear exactly what you have to say. Now let's return to Maya's story and examine the relationship that would ultimately lead to tragedy. At 22 years old, Jakari Martin Sugren entered Maya Johnson's life as a promising figure, someone who might provide stability to her small family. Their relationship, however, quickly revealed troubling dimensions that would set the stage for tragedy. According to police reports and testimony from those familiar with the couple, Martin Sugren displayed concerning behaviors from early in their relationship. What began as attentiveness soon morphed into something more controlling. He monitored Maya's communications, questioned her whereabouts, and increasingly isolated her from support networks that had previously sustained her through difficult times. He would call repeatedly if she was out without him, explained a coworker who witnessed these patterns firsthand. At first, it seemed like he just cared a lot. But then it became obvious it was about control. This progression from apparent concern to domination is a pattern documented by domestic violence experts, who note how controlling behaviors often masquerade as care before revealing their true nature. The court records revealed that Martin Sugren's need for control extended beyond Maya's physical movements to her digital footprint. He demanded access to her social media accounts, scrutinized her online interactions, and became visibly agitated when she engaged with others through these platforms. The irony that would later emerge, that Martin Sugren's own social media activity became the flashpoint for the fatal confrontation, underscores the double standard often present in such relationships. Neighbors on River Breeze Lane had witnessed concerning incidents in the months leading up to October 2024. Multiple residents reported hearing intense arguments through the walls of the apartment complex. One neighbor, who later provided testimony to investigators, recounted observing Martin Sugren physically blocking Maya from leaving their apartment during a heated exchange in August. "I should have called someone," the neighbor admitted after Maya's death. "I told myself it wasn't my business, but now I can't stop thinking about it." This sentiment, the reluctance to intervene in what appears to be a private matter, would be echoed by others who had glimpsed fragments of the volatile relationship. Court documents revealed that Martin Sugren had displayed aggressive physical restraint on multiple occasions, behavior that constitutes domestic abuse but had never resulted in police intervention. Friends noted that Maya had become increasingly guarded about her relationship, offering vague explanations for canceled plans or visible bruises that, in retrospect, pointed to escalating physical confrontations. The psychological component of their dynamic was equally concerning. Martin Sugren employed emotional manipulation, alternating between intense affection and cold withdrawal. This inconsistency, documented in text messages recovered during the investigation, created an environment where Maya constantly worked to regain his approval while walking on eggshells to avoid his displeasure. Financial control also factored into their relationship. Despite his inconsistent employment, Martin Sugren maintained decision-making authority over household expenses, creating another layer of dependency that complicated Maya's ability to leave an increasingly dangerous situation. Perhaps most concerning was Martin Sugren's pattern of escalating aggression when he felt his control threatened. Witness statements detailed incidents where his anger intensified dramatically in response to perceived challenges to his authority. Precisely the dynamic that would play out with fatal consequences on October 22nd. What makes Maya's story particularly heartbreaking is how many indicators of danger were visible, yet not recognized as part of a larger pattern. Individual incidents, a concerning text message here, a bruise explained away there, increasing isolation from friends, appeared manageable when viewed separately. Only when assembled after her death did these pieces form a clear picture of a relationship characterized by domination rather than partnership. Law enforcement records indicated no previous official reports of domestic violence involving the couple, highlighting a common gap in protection. Without formal documentation of earlier incidents, intervention options remained limited until the situation reached its tragic conclusion. The relationship between Maya and Martin Sugren illustrates how domestic violence typically escalates over time, rather than appearing suddenly. Each unchallenged controlling behavior, each isolated incident without consequence, reinforced a dynamic that ultimately led to fatal violence. Maya's story underscores the importance of recognizing these patterns not as isolated occurrences, but as connected warning signs demanding attention and intervention. October 22, 2024 began as an ordinary autumn day in Tallahassee. The temperature had dropped slightly, bringing relief from Florida's persistent heat. Inside the home on River Breeze Lane, however, tensions were about to boil over between Maya Johnson and Yakari Martin Sugren. According to police reports and witness statements, the catalyst for what would become a fatal confrontation was remarkably commonplace in the digital age: social media activity. Maya had discovered that Martin Sugren had liked photos of another woman on Instagram. While such interactions might seem trivial to outsiders, in the context of their already strained relationship, this digital gesture carried significant weight. She questioned him about it, stated the official report, based on interviews with witnesses. She wanted to know why he was interacting with this other woman online. This questioning, a natural response in any relationship marked by trust issues, triggered an explosive reaction from Martin Sugren, who perceived it as a challenge to his autonomy and authority. What began as a conversation about online boundaries quickly deteriorated into a heated verbal exchange. Neighbors later told investigators they heard raised voices around 7:30 p.m., with the volume and intensity increasing as the evening progressed. One neighbor reported hearing a woman's voice saying, "You can't treat me this way," followed by a man shouting unintelligible responses. Court documents reveal that Martin Sugren's anger escalated rapidly. His behavior followed a documented pattern of intensification when feeling questioned or challenged. Witnesses described how his physical movements became increasingly agitated, pacing the room, gesturing forcefully, and eventually standing over Maya in what multiple accounts described as an intimidating posture. Most disturbingly, Maya's children, aged 4 and 6, were present throughout this escalation. According to their statements, collected by child welfare specialists in the days following the incident, they had been watching television in the living room when the argument began. As voices raised, the children became frightened, but remained in the adjoining room, able to hear and partially see the events as they unfolded. "Mommy was crying," the older child later told investigators, providing critical testimony about the sequence of events. "He was yelling at her. We got scared." This account from a child's perspective captured both the emotional intensity and the power imbalance that characterized the confrontation. The argument shifted from verbal to physical as Martin Sugren moved into Maya's personal space, backing her against a wall. Physical evidence collected at the scene indicated a struggle had occurred. Overturned furniture, a broken lamp, and disrupted items on countertops told the story of movement and resistance through the small apartment. It was at this point, approximately 40 minutes into the confrontation, that Martin Sugren retrieved a firearm. According to forensic reports, the gun had been stored in a bedroom closet, requiring him to leave the main area of the argument, locate the weapon, and return with it. Actions that prosecutors would later argue demonstrated deliberation rather than impulse. Witness testimony from the children confirmed that Martin Sugren returned to the living area holding the gun. He had something black in his hand. The older child reported, "Mommy looked scared when she saw it." What happened next occurred in a matter of seconds. Martin Sugren, by his own admission in subsequent interviews, claimed to have been preparing to leave the residence, with the gun concealed under his armpit. However, forensic analysis of the bullet trajectory, blood spatter patterns, and positioning of both individuals painted a different picture. The single shot fired struck Mia in the upper torso. Medical examiners determined the bullet damaged major blood vessels, causing catastrophic blood loss. Despite the chaos of the moment, one detail stood out with grim clarity. Mia was 9 weeks pregnant at the time of her death, adding another dimension of tragedy to an already devastating event. The children's accounts of the immediate aftermath provided crucial details. They described the loud sound of the gunshot, their mother falling to the floor, and Martin Sugren's panicked reaction. "He kept saying, 'No, no, no,'" the older child recounted, and then he used his phone. Phone records confirmed that Martin Sugren called emergency services at 8:47 p.m., telling the dispatcher, "There's been an accident. My girlfriend's been shot." This framing of the event as accidental would become central to his subsequent defense. First responders arrived at the River Breeze Lane address at 8:54 p.m. Paramedics found Maya unresponsive with a single gunshot wound. Despite immediate medical intervention, she was pronounced dead at the scene at 9:12 p.m. The children, traumatized by witnessing these events, were removed from the home by Child Protective Services and placed temporarily with Maya's sister. Police secured the scene and took Martin Sugren into custody. Body camera footage from responding officers captured his initial statement. "It was an accident. The gun just went off." This claim would become the foundation of his defense strategy, though physical evidence would soon call it into question. The firearm, a 9mm handgun legally registered to Martin Sugren, was recovered at the scene. Ballistics experts noted that the weapon lacked any mechanical defects that might cause an accidental discharge. The safety mechanism was functional, and the trigger pressure required to fire the weapon was within manufacturer specifications. Details that would prove significant as investigators assembled a more complete understanding of the night's events. As dawn broke on October 23rd, the investigation was already shifting from what happened to why, and whether an accident was a plausible explanation for the death of a young mother and her unborn child. The Leon County Sheriff's Department assigned a team of experienced detectives to Maya Johnson's case immediately following the shooting. What began as a response to a reported accidental discharge quickly evolved into a homicide investigation as evidence accumulated that contradicted Martin Sugren's account of events. Forensic technicians worked through the night of October 22nd and into the following day, meticulously documenting the scene at the River Breeze Lane residence. Their findings would become pivotal in understanding what truly happened during those fatal moments. The physical evidence tells a different story than what Mr. Martin Sugren described, noted the lead detective in his preliminary report. Analysis of the bullet's trajectory revealed inconsistencies with an accidental discharge scenario. The angle of entry, blood spatter patterns, and positioning of furniture all suggested a shooting that occurred during a confrontation rather than an unexpected discharge during departure. Ballistics experts examined the firearm extensively. Their report concluded, the weapon was in proper working condition with all safety mechanisms functioning as designed. The trigger pull, required consistent with manufacturer specifications, would necessitate deliberate pressure. This technical assessment directly challenged the notion that the gun just went off, as Martin Sugren had claimed. Fingerprint analysis detected Martin Sugren's prints not just on the expected grip areas, but also on the trigger and slide, indicating deliberate handling rather than casual carrying. Gunshot residue tests further established his position relative to Maya at the time of discharge, placing him directly facing her rather than turned away, as his statement suggested. Perhaps most compelling was the reconstruction of the scene based on physical evidence. Using advanced modeling techniques, investigators determined that for the bullet to travel the path it did, the gun would need to be pointed directly at Maya from approximately 3 feet away, a position incompatible with Martin Sugren's claim of having the weapon tucked under his arm while attempting to leave. On October 24th, the medical examiner's office completed the autopsy, confirming what family members had already shared. Maya Johnson was 9 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. This finding transformed the legal dimensions of the case, as Florida law recognizes the unlawful death of an unborn child as a separate offense. The victim sustained a single gunshot wound to the upper left chest, stated the autopsy report. The trajectory indicates the bullet traveled downward at an angle of approximately 15 degrees, damaging major blood vessels and resulting in rapid blood loss. Death occurred within minutes of injury. Examination confirmed pregnancy at approximately 9 weeks gestation. Investigators compiled a comprehensive timeline by integrating physical evidence with witness statements. The children's testimonies, collected by specialized interviewers trained in trauma-sensitive approaches, provided crucial details about the sequence of events. Their accounts contradicted Martin Sugren's narrative on several key points, particularly regarding his demeanor before retrieving the gun. By October 28th, detectives had compiled enough evidence to present a case to the district attorney's office. The investigation had moved beyond determining what happened to establishing legal culpability. While the evidence did not support premeditation, it thoroughly dismantled the accident defense. I need to pause here for a moment. What we're discussing isn't just a news story. It's a reality that affects thousands of families across the country every year. If you're finding this analysis valuable, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue investigating these cases and bringing attention to the complex issues surrounding domestic violence. Also, if anything in this video resonates with your own experiences or concerns about someone you know, I've included resources in the description below. Sometimes recognizing the warning signs can make all the difference. Now let's continue examining how this case moved from investigation to prosecution. The district attorney's office reviewed the complete investigative file, including forensic reports, witness statements, and Martin Sugren's own contradictory accounts. Their assessment was definitive. The evidence supported charges of manslaughter rather than an accidental death. On November 2, 2024, formal charges were filed against Jakari Martin Sugren. 2 counts of manslaughter, one for Maya Johnson and one for her unborn child, plus a weapons charge for using a firearm during the commission of a felony. The prosecution's decision reflected the evidence of recklessness and negligence while acknowledging the absence of clear premeditation. As Martin Sugren was held without bail awaiting trial, investigators continued building their case, interviewing additional witnesses, and analyzing digital evidence from both Maya's and Martin Sugren's devices to establish the pattern of behavior that culminated in tragedy. The state of Florida v. Jakari Martin Sugren commenced in Leon County Courthouse on February 15, 2025. The crowded courtroom reflected the community's investment in seeking justice for Maya Johnson and her unborn child. The prosecution presented the case with dual manslaughter charges, acknowledging Florida's legal recognition that the death of an unborn child constitutes a separate offense. This is not a murder case in the traditional sense, the lead prosecutor explained during opening statements. But neither is it an accident, as the defendant claims. This is a case about reckless disregard for human life, 2 lives, resulting from a pattern of escalating domestic conflict and the introduction of a deadly weapon into a volatile situation. The prosecution built their case methodically over 7 days, presenting forensic evidence that directly contradicted Martin Sugren's accident narrative. Ballistics experts demonstrated that the gun could not have discharged accidentally, given its safety features and trigger resistance. Crime scene analysts used 3D reconstructions to show jurors the positioning that would have been necessary for the bullet to follow its documented trajectory, a position inconsistent with Martin Sugrin's claim of having the weapon tucked under his arm. Perhaps most impactful was the testimony from child welfare specialists who had interviewed Maya's children. Though the children did not appear in court, their recorded statements provided crucial eyewitness accounts of Martin Sugrin's demeanor and actions leading up to the shooting. Jurors watched attentively as Maya's 6-year-old described seeing Martin Sugrin return to the room with something black in his hand and how Mommy looked scared. The defense strategy centered on portraying the shooting as a tragic accident resulting from poor judgment rather than criminal intent. My client made the terrible decision to retrieve a firearm during an argument, his attorney acknowledged. But he never intended to harm Ms. Johnson or their unborn child. This was a momentary lapse in judgment with devastating consequences. Character witnesses testified to Martin Sugrin's lack of previous criminal history, while the defense hired their own firearms expert who suggested that stress and adrenaline could have contributed to an accidental discharge. However, this expert was unable to explain the specific bullet trajectory in a way that aligned with the accident theory. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict on February 28, 2025, guilty on both counts of manslaughter as well as the firearms charge. Martin Sugrin showed little visible reaction as the verdict was read, standing silently beside his attorney. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, Maya's sister Kayla addressed the court. "My sister was building a life despite challenges. Her children have lost their mother. Our family has lost 2 beloved members, Maya and the baby she carried. No sentence can restore what was taken from us, but we ask for justice that reflects the gravity of these losses." The judge acknowledged the complex nature of the case before pronouncing sentence. 15 years for each manslaughter count, to be served consecutively, plus 5 additional years for the firearms charge. The 35-year total sentence represented a recognition of the dual lives lost and the circumstances surrounding their deaths. In delivering the sentence, the judge directly addressed Martin Sugrin. "The evidence clearly demonstrates that while you may not have set out that evening with the intention to kill, your actions showed a profound disregard for the safety and well-being of Miss Johnson and your unborn child. The decision to introduce a deadly weapon into a domestic dispute created an inevitable risk that resulted in irreversible tragedy." The verdict and sentencing generated significant media coverage throughout Florida, drawing attention to the intersection of domestic violence, firearms access, and legal protections for unborn children. For Maya's family and community, the conclusion of legal proceedings marked not an ending, but a transition to the long process of healing and remembrance. The case of Maya Johnson offers critical insights into domestic violence dynamics that might help others recognize dangerous situations before they escalate to tragedy. Several key indicators were present in her relationship with Martin Sugrin that domestic violence experts identify as significant risk factors. The controlling behaviors exhibited by Martin Sugrin, monitoring Maya's whereabouts, restricting her social connections, and demonstrating excessive jealousy, represent common precursors to physical violence. The gradual isolation from friends and family reduced Maya's access to support networks that might have provided intervention or escape options. This case highlights how seemingly minor digital interactions can trigger disproportionate reactions in volatile relationships. The Instagram like that sparked the fatal confrontation demonstrates how social media can function as both a surveillance tool and a flashpoint in relationships marked by control issues. Digital boundaries increasingly represent a new frontier in domestic disputes, with online activity becoming an extension of relationship dynamics. Experts point to firearms access as a critical factor that dramatically increases the lethality risk in domestic violence situations. Data from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement indicates that the presence of guns in homes where domestic disputes occur increases the risk of fatal outcomes by more than 500%. This statistic underscores the importance of temporary firearm removal policies in cases where domestic tension has been documented. For those currently in situations resembling Maya's, resources exist that might prevent similar outcomes. Domestic violence hotlines offer 24/7 confidential support, safety planning, and connection to local services. Legal advocacy groups can help obtain protection orders that include firearm restrictions. Emergency shelter networks provide immediate safe housing options for those needing to leave dangerous situations quickly. The tragedy of Maya Johnson's death has prompted renewed attention to domestic violence prevention in Leon County. Local officials have expanded funding for intervention programs and enhanced training for law enforcement in recognizing high-risk domestic situations before they turn deadly. As we conclude Maya's story, I want to acknowledge that for many watching, this isn't just a documentary. It's a reality that might feel all too familiar. If you or someone you know is experiencing relationship patterns similar to what we've discussed, please know that help is available. I've included links to national and local resources in the description below. Your engagement matters beyond this video. By subscribing to our channel and sharing this content, you help expand awareness about domestic violence warning signs. Your comments create community for those who might feel isolated in similar situations. Remember that the most important step in prevention is recognition, seeing patterns before they escalate, and taking action. One conversation, one resource shared, or one moment of intervention could make all the difference in someone's life. Thank you for joining me in honoring Maya's memory by spreading awareness that might save others.